a silent killer, indiscriminate. It not only kills, but it destroys the lives of those left behind. The only way the destruction can be stopped is to talk. Tonight, we are lifting the veil of suicide. Thank you for joining us tonight for this special broadcast. I'm Dawn G. This year's number of deadly crimes are steadily increasing, hitting close to 70 homicides in 2015. Louisville is on track to tie its deadliest year in history, 1997, with 78 homicides. If you think that is disturbing, there are far more suicides in our community than there are homicides. The word suicide gets your attention, but somehow the actions leading up to it often go unnoticed.
7 counties tells me every year they take 20,000 suicide-related phone calls just out of Jefferson County. That doesn't include the surrounding counties.
Steve Ulrich is passionate about saving lives.
We know people put off warning signs. We know the situational clues that they are in. We know if we can just simply ask the question, are you thinking about killing yourself?
It is a question Ulrich wishes he knew to ask his son, Nathan, 13 years ago.
I mean, Nathan was drowning in depression, that all of the situations that he was in started pulling him down.
Nathan was a basketball player at Western Kentucky University, but after an injury, he lost his scholarship and his position on the team. During the same time period, his relationship with his girlfriend ended.
We knew he was devastated. We called everywhere, we looked everywhere. He goes back to Western, he ends his life, and they found him in the dorm. I'm here on my own nickel. I don't get paid.
Ulrich spends his time now supporting and teaching suicide awareness and prevention efforts. His wife, Jan, is now the suicide prevention coordinator.
It's the most preventable death there is. Depression, one of the most preventable.
Louisville Metro Police records show a 30% jump in suicides compared to this time a year ago. The suicide total also exceeds the city's homicide rate.
You never hear of anybody dying of depression. We changed the disease to the means. They died by suicide. No, they died from depression. Depression claimed their life.
Depression is the #1 cause of suicide. In all of Kentucky, suicide outpaces homicides by nearly 4 to 1. It is the second leading cause of death for Kentuckians ages 15 to 24.
No family needs to go what we're going through. It's preventable. And all across this city, we have children dying. We have adults dying.
Why is it taking place?
Anthony Smith, director of the city's Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods Department, says it has been difficult to get a conversation started about suicide.
Why do people put themselves in harm's way or harm themselves? When you see people removing themselves and becoming disconnected, how do we reach back out to them and make sure that they're okay?
When we look at suicide across Jefferson County hospital,
Ulrich doesn't believe death is the goal of suicide victims.
They don't want to die. They just want the pain to end.
Emotional pain, physical pain, or mental pain, Ulrich stresses.
Don't be afraid to ask. Dawn, are you thinking about killing yourself? Have you thought about laying down and not waking up?
One Love Louisville, a group formulated this year, includes securing resources to improve available suicide hotlines in the city, training more JCPS employees and volunteers, provide training to faith-based groups, and help local companies create a protocol for employees with issues of suicide.
Everybody has a role to play, but everybody is touched by suicides.
Well, this hour will be as honest and as life-changing or life-saving as we can make it. My news director, Bill Shorey, joining me, and also Steve Ulrich. He has changed his entire life to fit around this one topic. It's a pleasure to have you all here. Maybe we can make a difference tonight. Steve, I'm going to start with you. Your son Nathan died, and this has totally changed your life.
Yeah, from the when I became aware that it was the second leading cause of death on a college campus, I asked the question, why aren't we talking about it? Why didn't somebody tell me about it when we went on that campus? And then I realized I can't stop. If I stay silent, then I'm like everybody else. I can't stay silent. You know, for 14 to 17-year-olds, you know it's a second leading cause of death. Why aren't we doing something about it? Why aren't we more vocal? Why aren't we putting more energy into it? You know, we had, in 2013, we had 3 deaths of 14 to 17-year-olds in Jefferson County. And I often look at that and ask the question, you know, Ebola hit our country, and we threw all kinds of money at it. And it was a very important disease that we had to attack. And since that time that we attacked it, we've only had, what, 1 death in the United States. Here in Jefferson County, we had 3 youths, children, that died by suicide. And we just sat back and let it, as though it never happened, as though those people never existed. They did exist. They were wonderful people. And I can tell you, they don't want to die. I was at a middle school last spring, talked to all the students in the class. They sent me, there were 70-something cards, everything else, from 8th graders, thanking me, telling me I didn't realize that I could talk to my friends about suicide. I didn't know what to say to them. I didn't know that they were at that point. And others were going, I mean, there's stuff in here that said, I was thinking about dying until you talked to me.
Well, Bill, and when I ask this question to my news director, I have to ask it as well for myself, because this is the industry I work in. When we hear somebody's died over the scanner or wherever we get that information, and then all of a sudden we hear suicide, we almost stop in our tracks and go, oh, okay, well, we don't need to cover that. Why is our industry that way?
You know, traditionally the thought has been that we don't cover suicides. That's been the line for as long as I can remember in the media. And the thought behind that, I think, has been that for the most part, the people who are directly touched by that already know about it by the time we get around to reporting it. And I think maybe more importantly than that, to the degree that you report on it and sort of celebrate the person involved, that it may have some impact on encouraging others. And that's been the thought process in the past. But as you know, that thought process is changing now.
But even when we did report a suicide just a little while ago, we got some heat for that.
We did, and I think you're talking about the case of Maddie Yates.
Yes.
And you know, her parents have now, her family has now spoken out on that. When we initially reported it, we didn't report on her name, but her family has now spoken out, and so we're doing that. You know, that was the case of a male high school student who posted a video talking about her, the reasons that she was going to take her own life, and after which she immediately did so. That we had a lot of debate within the newsroom about whether or not we should cover that, even though it was a huge topic of discussion in that school and in JCPS and the community in general. I think where we got to with that was we all learned something by watching that video. We all were struck by the fact that that was any other kid that any one of us knew that could have been in any one of our lives. And as you know, I have a daughter, and that totally changed the way that I will approach dealing with her in the future. And as Steve said and put so eloquently, once you have that information, how can you not share that? And we are in a position to share that in a broader way than most.
All right. Well, when you know better, you do better. Throughout the night, we will be bringing you multiple facts and statistics that prove what a problem suicide is in our community and what we can do to address it. 90% of those who died by suicide have an underlying mental illness. After cancer and heart disease, suicide accounts for more years of life lost than any other cause of death. You do your best to protect your children from those diseases. Why not suicide? We talk about our youth next. Nearly 60% of adults with mental illness did not receive treatment in the previous year, an unbelievable suicide fact. More teenagers and young adults die from suicide than from cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke, pneumonia, influenza, and chronic lung disease combined. No parent wants to be a nag and ask too many questions, but no parent wants to bury their child either. If you think something is wrong with your child, that alone is reason enough to stop, listen, learn, and talk. 1 out of every 10 high school students have a suicide plan, according to the CDC's Youth Violence Survey.
They're at a point where they've thought about it.
Anxiety disorders, depression in general, we know that affects everything that the kids do.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention stresses suicide is the third leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-olds after accidents and homicides.
Most adults, most parents never think it's going to happen to them.
Steve Ulrich's 20-year-old son, Nathan, took his own life.
We thought he was in the safest place he could be, on a college campus playing basketball for Western Kentucky University.
Nathan lost his basketball scholarship after an injury, and in the same time period, lost his girlfriend.
From there, depression started setting in. We didn't see it. We didn't know what to look for.
The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention warns there are signs that may mean someone is at risk for suicide. The risk is greater if the behavior is new and if it is related to a painful event, loss, or change. Talking about wanting to die, looking for a way to kill oneself, such as an online search for buying a gun. Talking about feelings of hopelessness, talking about feeling trapped or feeling unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others, increasing the use of drugs or alcohol, behaving recklessly, sleeping too little or sleeping too much, withdrawing and showing rage or extreme mood swings. Ulrich advises what not to say to someone who may be thinking about suicide.
Get over it. Suck it up. It's no big deal. It is a big deal, no matter who it is.
Stop, look, and listen to your child. Depression may take the form of problems with friends, grades, sleep, or being cranky and irritable, rather than the chronic sadness or crying.
Mental health affects everything. Mental health affects their academic performance. Mental health affects their social health, how they interact with other people.
Never ignore these signs.
Don't blow them off. Listen to them. Don't judge them. I mean, goodness gracious, the Bible even tells us that. Stop judging. Don't be afraid to ask. Dawn, are you thinking about killing yourself? Have you thought about laying down and not waking up?
Learning more about what might lead to suicide may help prevent other tragedies.
I'll go to my grave talking about suicide prevention. No family needs to go what we're going through. Please call somebody, call anybody, but please don't give up.
From JCPS, the lead psychologist, so afraid I'm going to mess up your name here, Joe
Bargione.
Bargione, and that's exactly what I was going to say. We're talking about our kids now, and we've had a child as young as 10 years old in the JCPS system take their life. I can't even imagine at 10 years old that suicide would ever enter your mind.
Yeah. What we're seeing is there has been an increase over the last few years on suicide attempts and completed suicides in the pediatric population, including students. And it's just that the pressures that they're faced with every day and the risk factors are contributing to an increase in the attempts and the completed suicides. What we try and do in Jefferson County is to build resiliency skills in our students, so if they are faced with a difficult situation, they have skills that they can rely on to bounce back from those events and not to even consider thoughts of suicide, that there are other things or other ways of dealing with the problems.
Now, I had a chance to go to Butler, and they were there. They were doing a class for the students to talk about what you do if you think your friends are in trouble or if you are in trouble. And then they have a session for the parents. Big problem. No parents.
Right. And one of the things what we're trying to do each year, the district provides lessons to all our middle school and high school students. Over 40,000 students receive a lesson every year. One of the things what we're trying to do is also reaching out to our parents. And so one of the things we're thinking about doing next year is offering parent trainings at our schools to make that available for the parents.
But they've got to come.
Right, and that's the challenge for us. We have to explain to them is that suicide is the second leading cause of death for our teenagers. Most people don't realize that. And the only thing that leads more are accidents. So it's more than cancer or any other diseases. And that it does play. In fact, when you look at suicides in our community, there's probably at least 17 times more attempts than completed suicides. So it's a very significant problem. And as a community, we have to address it, just not within the school, but all our community partners to support our students and children.
All right, we're wrapping up here. Any last word?
No, we appreciate the opportunity to be here today and tell you what JCPS is doing to support our students.
All right, we appreciate you taking care of those students. Well, it is a survivor guide to the pain left behind from the tragedy of suicide. We're going to address the loved ones left behind, and families join together to walk out of the darkness and silence of suicide, an event to help the survivors lift each other up. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. How it ends up getting so much, I guess, shame around it, I can't even understand it. But here to talk to us is Gage Donahue, Louisville Survivor Guide, and Vince Got Breath Out of the Darkness. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So let's talk about what you do, because what you do is extremely important. We're going to start with you. Did I say your name right?
Donahue.
Donahue. First name?
Gage.
Gage. All right. Want to make sure I get everybody's. Now you have the. It's for survivors.
Yes.
The Louisville Survivors Guide. You have so much information in here that it's unbelievable. And I've talked to a lot of people over the last month about suicide and not heard them mention that they know about these resources. Tell me how you do, how you're able to reach out to folks.
Well, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has a walk every year, which Vince will talk about. And we have a fall spring fundraiser, we have a spring fundraiser, and then private donations. And we take those funds and purchase the materials and then put the packets together. The packets are in the Jefferson County schools. They're in all the funeral homes in Louisville and Southern Indiana. They're in a lot of the hospitals, the corporations, human resource departments have them. Life Springs in Southern Indiana has them.
I mean, they're filled with everything: after suicide, loss, coping with grief, child survivors of suicide, all the information that you can imagine. Now, Vince, we have Out of the Darkness walk.
Right.
I see the picture that is on of the pin that you're wearing. Can you tell me about that?
That's Jamie. That's my son. So he was 24 when he died. He was going to college, and he's getting ready to go back to UK for his junior year, but he had probably enough credits to graduate. He kept changing his major, and I said, Jamie, you need to figure out what you want to do. So he set out a semester and decided what he wanted to do. In the meantime, he met a girl at the Southeast Christian College group, and they dated for 8 months, and it seemed like as long as he was in school, her family thought he was great. Once he dropped out of school, her dad said, well, he's a bum, get rid of her. And she did around the 1st of October in 2002, or excuse me, 1st of July in 2002. They broke up, and at that time he was working, unloading tractor trailers. He'd go to work like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, get off at noon, and he, in the 3 weeks between their breakup and his death, he lost 25 pounds. Oh. He gave away his baseball cards collection, he gave away his music collection, he gave away his snow skis, he gave away a lot of his clothes. All those are signs of deepening depression.
Did you know that at the time?
No, I did not.
And that's why it's so important to get that out here.
That's, to me, if we would just pay attention to what's going on with our kids. And there's going to be times, I think a lot of parents, as has been said before, are uncomfortable asking those questions. Well, it's rather to be uncomfortable there than in a funeral home. And I always tell the kids, if you have a friend and they're talking about, you have these signs, please contact somebody, because if they're your friend, they will forgive you for, breaking that breach of their privacy. But if you don't, then the consequences are, we all know what they are, which is the death of another child, which is utterly ridiculous. There's no excuse for it, really.
I can see you're still having a hard time.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I appreciate you. Out of the darkness, just give us the date of the walk.
It's November 7th. It's at Waterfront Park, South Lawn. If you go down, get off Brook Street, off 65 North, then you see the big glass condominium tower. We're right across the street. Just look for the big Ford 10. This is our 10th year on the river. Every year we've been on the river, we've increased both financially and the number of walkers. So it's a good walk. And there is one other thing I would like to stress, and we have a International Survivors of Suicide Day, which this year is November 21st. It's at the Northland Health Pavilion, which is just across the street at the Old Methodist Hospital. And basically this is the day for survivors to get together and comfort each other. And the basic thing with this is we want to let people know when they go through this, that there are other people going through this. You're not doing this alone. 3 weeks ago, I went to Welcome Bowling Green, and a lady came up whose daughter committed suicide 5 weeks ago in Carrollton, and 17 years old. And I just told her, I said, I wish that I had words to comfort you and let you know that eventually this, you're going to get through this. You have to get through it. But if you're going to get through it, it's good to know that there's other people, there's other resources you can use to help you get through it. You're not fighting this by yourself.
And that event's free.
And that
free and
event
open
is
to the
free.
public.
Right.
All right, Gage and Vince, thank you so much. I can't imagine how hard this is, but thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you do all you can, and you're pretty sure you have it all under control, and then the absolute worst happens. We meet the demon, depression, that can rip apart families and lives next. What do you do when someone tells you they're going to take their life? A brother does all he can to keep his brother alive. With 1 in 4 adults experiencing mental illness in a given year, you know somebody who is living with it or is impacted by suicide. Something to think about. There was no chance for a goodbye, no chance for reconciliation or understanding. Now, is there any chance for healing and moving on? The Kurtzingers didn't have a perfect life, but they had each other until Scott Kurtzinger took his own life, leaving Michelle alone. Michelle Kurtzinger can't help but smile when she talks about her husband, Scott. She also can't help but cry.
Everybody was so happy to see Scott when he walked into a room. A nurturing dad, loving husband, great friend. You could always count on Scott.
Everyone loves Scott, but Scott.
He'd say, I'm not a good dad. I'm not a good husband.
He retreated from life, not even coming out of his room for meals.
Because I really thought I had a control on things. And, by taking him to psychologist, psychiatrist, the different medications that we tried.
According to the CDC, more than 50% of all people who die by suicide suffer from major depression.
He consumed himself with sadness.
Michelle's safety net, or so she thought, a question she asked every day before leaving the house.
Promise me you're going to be okay till I get home. And even that day, February 1st, 2013, I even talked to him 3 times.
But it was the 4th time that set off alarms.
And you know that gut feeling you get when something's not right.
On the 4th call, there was no answer.
It went to voicemail. Scott never turned off his phone. Never. So I called his mom. And she said, you think something's wrong? And I said, yes, can you please go to the house? And she says, honey, I can't find him.
Scott's mother quietly walked through the home until she noticed a curtain near the garage that was usually drawn was open.
I lost it. I said, run out there. She runs out there and she said, Michelle, the car is running.
The car was running inside the closed garage, and Scott was inside the car. Within minutes, so was Scott's mother.
She got through the side garage door, not even a cut or bruises on her or anything. She busted out the glass. And I get home, and my sister has him in her lap.
Scott took his own life at the age of 39.
Depression ate him up.
Another life lost to suicide. Although homicide often is the headlines, there are far more deaths by suicide each year.
It's not a hot topic. People don't like to talk about suicide.
Michelle knows how Scott died. She knows about what time he died. But what she really wants to know is
Why? Why did you do it that day? And that's something I'll never get an answer to.
what would you tell him if you could tell him something?
I've learned a lot. I miss him. And depression is such a demon, is what I say. It literally, it will eat you alive. It consumed him.
Michelle wears Scott's wedding ring every day. She believes if she could talk to him today, he would say, I never would have done it. I just had an off day. I had a very bad off day. How do you heal? And what do you have to say when you are left behind after the act of suicide? We'll hear from a true survivor who tried to take his life. He didn't succeed. What he has to say to anyone who thinks there is no other way out. And as our military men and women return, so does the post-traumatic stress and the problems, how we welcome our soldiers home, and how we get them healthy. We are lifting the veil of suicide. It is important to talk about the hard topics to raise awareness. Suicide, whether completed or thankfully interrupted, needs to be discussed. Suicide is a big problem in our community. If you haven't thought about killing yourself, chances are you know someone who has. There's a cure for suicide, but we must all be part of it. We must treat depression and other mental illness just as we would cancer or any other disease. The youngest to fall victim to suicide in our community was just 10 years old. It's time to not shove it under the rug. A person dies by suicide every 12.8 minutes in the U.S., according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Every day, approximately 112 Americans take their own lives. That's equal to a small plane crash. 13 years ago, Steve Ulrich's 20-year-old son ended his life.
It is a big deal, no matter who it is, whether it's that 14-year-old that's being bullied or has a home situation, or that 75-year-old man that has lost his wife.
Over 50% of all people who die by suicide suffer from major depression. Michelle Kurtzinger's husband barricaded himself in his bedroom and away from the world before he took his own life.
And depression is such a demon. It doesn't matter your money, your color, your age, your background.
Michael Short knows that demon firsthand.
I have them thoughts. But like I said, I talk to somebody now. I have a doctor. Yeah, I had 3 brothers commit suicide.
Out of 8 children, 3 of the boys in the family took their own lives.
First one in 1976, David, he was 21. The second one was Danny, 1994, he was 42. And Raymond, he was 52, and his was in 2002.
The family never spoke of the tragedy, and the family did not survive.
It was just something you didn't talk about at the family.
They do not speak to each other at all now.
But after the first suicide, it was like we woke up one day and the world was different. And it seemed like the only time we got together was at a funeral.
Anthony Smith, the director of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, is focused on developing and promoting a strategy for suicide prevention in the metro.
That's part of the next step is figuring out the why. We're up about 30%, still don't know why.
After losing 3 brothers and contemplating suicide himself, Short can share some insight.
There are better ways than that, because that's final. Suicide is final.
And after living with the pain and memories of losing 3 brothers, surviving the tragedy, he knows.
And you don't know who you hurt. You hurt more people than you think.
Scott Kurtzinger killed himself, but it's Michelle Kurtzinger who feels the pain.
I've changed. I'm not the same Michelle, but there's always going to be that piece of me that I can't get back, and I think about him every day.
Roger Sargent's anguish comes from the loss of his brother, his twin brother.
People say depression doesn't kill. Yes, it does kill. It absolutely kills.
Everybody is touched by suicides.
If we speak up, if we reach out.
Depression. All of it very manageable, all of it very treatable.
Treatable, but we've got to talk about it. It is a pleasure to have Steve Ulrich, who is here with us today. Your whole life changed when your 20-year-old son, Nathan, killed himself at school.
Right.
And you now do QPR. And you don't get paid for it, you just do it. But what does that stand for, QPR?
Question, persuade, refer. And much of the information that's in there is just basic information. You know, the warning signs that you featured a little earlier, the situational clues. Everybody puts off, for the most part, everyone puts off warning signs, whether it's the situation or whether they're saying something. And a lot of times, each person may get a piece. You may get a piece, I may get a piece, camera guy may get a piece, and tying that all together becomes that question. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
But how do I know when to ask someone about suicide? What if I'm like, well, I think they're sad, maybe they're sad, or, you know, well, how do I know?
At that point,
just do it.
Just do it. We ask people every day, hey, how you feeling? How you doing? Let's really ask people, how are you doing? You know, I have a friend of mine that works at the VA, and we were talking about this at one point in time. Why don't we talk about suicide? Well, we did a training. The next day, she and another guy was on the elevator, and they just began talking about, hey, are you okay? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And the other person said, well, thank you for asking, but no, I'm not. Well, the guy standing between them said
he was.
I am.
Wow.
He's alive today simply because that question was brought up. Are you okay? Are you thinking about killing yourself? These nobody, they are not looking to dying. They're looking at ending the pain that they're in. They don't see it as a death. They're seeing it as, I'm done hurting. I'm not going to hurt anymore. I can't manage this. And a lot of times it's just that simple question of going, Dawn, you're going through so much stuff right now. Have you thought about laying down and not waking up? And if you say yes, then it's okay. We're here together. Now we know, okay, we're on the same wavelength. Let's see what we can do together. That's the question. Then persuade. Let's go talk to somebody. Let's go together. I will go with you. You know, I'm your friend. My world would be upside down if you're not here. And then to refer. Where do we go to? Whether it's 7 counties or to the hospital or somebody else or the psychologist. That we've got great people. You know, we talked earlier, Joe was talking about the ratio of 17 to 1. That means 17 people survived. Some of them survived on their own. Some of them survived because they sought medical help. 17 to 1. Let's make that number over here on this column 0. 0 suicides in Metro Louisville.
All right. Thank you. We'll have you back in just a second. Well, in Louisville, 85% of suicide victims are Caucasian, 12% are African American, 3% are Asian or Hispanic. Doesn't matter. Either way, they're all people that we need to save. It is a story too hard to imagine. Twins who started life together, but one left too soon. And they are trained to fight for our country, but when they return home, many are fighting for their sanity and their lives. What can we do to help our vets when they return home? In Louisville, 78% of the suicides are male, 22% female, as we look at suicide facts today. Well, twins, they start life together. They actually bond in the womb and have been known to invent their own language. Ronald and Roger Sargent were as close as brothers could be. But what do you do when one brother prepares you for his own death?
We were both born in Louisville. Obviously, we were the same age.
Yes, Roger and Ronald Sargent are twins.
He loved to have fun. He enjoyed his job very much as a nurse. They were very fond of him at the hospital.
Roger's twin brother Ronald had a good job, a close circle of friends, and a genetic condition that began to change his life and his attitude toward life.
It's called CMT. It's a hereditary neuropathy.
Roger also has the disease, CMT affects all the nerves that branch from the brain and the spinal cord.
But his came on him much, much quicker.
In a matter of 6 to 8 weeks.
He lost his job. He had to move out of his condo into a one-level apartment. I was using a walker. It was a nightmare. I mean, suddenly all this happened within a 6-week period of time.
Ronald's health and his spirit were declining.
He saw he was going down.
Everyone saw he was going down. Everyone could see he was down.
He was extremely depressed. He was on antidepressants.
The twins discussed their health. Roger looking for medical answers. Ronald.
He said, I know what I need to do. And
Roger feared the worst. When Ronald's doctor questioned if he was suicidal.
And Ronald said no, but I knew better. He'd already told me he was.
He had already told his brother he had taken a large amount of Tylenol. He also tried to choke himself to death. Both attempts failed.
And my daughter, oldest daughter, said, Dad, can't you just put him on a plane and force him to come?
Ronald had no desire to go anywhere or do anything.
I thought that sounded so strange. How do you have depression so bad that you can't get motivated to get out of the bed?
Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide and the #1 cause of suicide.
May was the last time I saw him, May of 2014. And I'm so glad I told him I loved him before I left.
It was 5 days after the suicide of Robin Williams. Ronald took his life.
It bothers me a great deal that he died alone. I don't think anybody should have to die alone.
Then and now.
Now there's a hole there that'll never be replaced. I can tell it's an emptiness that's just never going to be fixed.
Roger's plea to anyone who may be struggling with depression and thoughts of suicide.
No matter how bad your circumstances are, there are people that love you and care, and they don't want you to do this. So fight it as much as you can. Try to get the support you need.
There is support, and every day things will change, maybe for the better. Roger said when he sees his brother again, he won't question him. He won't even fuss at him. He will just think and say to him, I'm so sorry this had to go this way. Well, it has been called an epidemic. Veteran suicide running at about 22 suicides a day. That's 8,000 a year. What you can do to help our military men and women. In Louisville, when it comes to suicide, the highest number of deaths were of adults between 55 to 64. The second highest, adults ages 35 to 44. But we need to work not to lose anyone. Well, there is a growing threat confronting our strong military men and women. Suicide rates among service members have reached a 30-year high. It is not just a military problem. As we lose husbands, sons, brothers, wives, sisters, and friends, we must all jump in to win this preventable war.
There's still a lot of stigma around suicide. It's amazing. People don't like to talk about it.
The most extensive study yet by the U.S. government found every day one U.S. vet dies by his own hand every 65 minutes. That is 22 deaths a day.
22 a day is an estimate, but it's the best estimate that we have right now.
It is also estimated that each day, one active duty soldier takes his own life, burdened with the stigma associated with mental health issues and the military shame surrounding post-traumatic stress.
I was in the first platoon to cross over into Iraq on the night of March 19th. I guess I went into a different mode over there. Well, I was a trained soldier.
Brent Bryce was trained for war, but he wasn't prepared for the battle he would encounter when trying to fight for his own life.
I became homeless, suicidal. I was in 3 horrible car wrecks from DUI. I got DUIs.
Dr. Caitlin Thompson, the Deputy Director of Suicide Prevention at the VA, stresses one person, one connection. One act of compassion can make a difference in the life or the death of a veteran or soldier going through a tough time.
One small act can really make the change and in a veteran's life. Be as open and non-judgmental as possible. You know, not saying things like, well, how could you do that? You have all of this going on in your life.
Awareness and action by family and friends could be lifesavers. It was Bryce's mother who stepped in to fight this battle for her son.
She asked me what was wrong with me. I said, I don't know, but I just don't want to live anymore. So my mom picked up the phone.
You can call on behalf of a veteran or a family member, and you can get that help for that veteran as well.
What's the worst that's going to happen if you confront this? Maybe they'll get mad at you. Well, so what? I'd rather have an angry family member than a dead family member.
The Veterans Crisis Hotline, online chat, or text messaging services, all free and all confidential.
Treatment works, and if you get into care, you really can get better, and you can do so well in your life. It's a step-by-step process.
Each step bringing a soldier and his family closer to healing.
I felt helpless, terrified. Something that any training that you go through is not going to prepare you for it.
You're not alone. I think that's the biggest point that I want to make.
You certainly are not alone. We will make sure on wave3.com that all the information you need will be there for any number and any person you need to get in touch with. Chris Johnson is here, Veterans Voices of Kentucky and Indiana, also F Troop 17th Cavalry of the Army. Your Voices of Kentucky and Indiana is just that. So anybody that needs to express anything that is a vet can come and talk to you all.
Yes, we in the past we would meet once a week, and that was due to the ramp up to our celebration of life that we have every September, and then now we're meeting once every other week. So it's not only veterans that are involved in this. We can have people come in from outside. We have people from some of the other 7 counties has been to some of our meetings. Various people from the county and the city come in and share ideas with us to help us make sure we're going in the right direction to help veterans.
Well, I have been to the meetings just to see what I can do for veterans. And one thing that you told me that really bothered me that I tried to help with, and I have no idea if I did or not, but the veterans that are in-house for mental health at the VA need plastic slippers for the shower. They need to be like
clogs.
Like little clogs, right? They had not flip-flops, but little clogs.
The plastic clogs, yeah. We were successful. We got 30 pairs donated from Shoe Carnival.
All right, I was just so worried thinking, oh my gosh, I'm doing nothing here, but you can still take those plastic clogs. That's what they need, because the government says, well, we can't pay for those. You know, we can't use money for those. So think about that, and maybe for Christmas, your church or a group, take as many as you can. When it comes to what you all do, though, you know, I think of veterans. I heard one veteran say that it's hard to talk to a person who's not been there before. What do we do for our family, the vets that are having trouble?
Well, what we do is we try to connect with veterans and provide a forum for veterans to express their views and opinions of what's going on within the VA system itself. And then we try to make sure that those issues are addressed and taken care of, whether it be with a veteran or a family member, for that matter. So we work with them, with the veterans and their families.
But there is help.
But definitely, we have all the resources are there available to us and anyone else, for that matter.
All right, we'll make sure you get that as well. Just go to wave3.com. We're going to come back and wrap things up. Stay with us. In Louisville, there are 39 zip codes. 16 of those zip codes account for 73% of suicide victims. Zip code 40291 has the most suicides. Want to remind you about what is going on for those who are working for our veterans. On November 11th Active Heroes and gym partners across America will work together to lift 22 million pounds and to raise donations and awareness to help end veteran suicide and to pay for the retreat you see right there. Wave 3 will also have an all-day telethon on Veterans Day the 11th, so make sure you watch us then. Find in-depth help, information, and facts at wave3.com. I thank you for watching. You too can make a difference to stop suicide.